Robert Wagner, a person of interest in the death of actress Natalie Wood.
Robert Wagner has been named a person of interest in the death of his wife, legendary actress Natalie Wood.
For over 4 decades, Hollywood has been haunted by one of its most chilling mysteries, the tragic death of Natalie Wood. Natalie, known for her captivating performances in West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, drowned off the coast of Catalina Island in 1981, under circumstances that have fueled endless speculations. At the center of it all is her husband, Robert Wagner, whose silence has only deepened the intrigue. Now, at 93, Wagner has finally decided to speak out. What does he know? What really happened that fateful night? Join us as we unravel the shocking revelation by Robert Wagner, the truth behind the death. Natalie Wood was more than just a Hollywood actress. She was a star who never faded. Unlike many child actors who struggle to stay in the spotlight as they grow up, Natalie only became more radiant. With her striking beauty, undeniable talent, and unforgettable screen presence, she won audiences over in classics like West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause. But her brilliant career came to an abrupt and tragic end, and the circumstances of her death remain one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries. It was the night of November 29, 1981. Natalie was aboard a yacht named Splendor, anchored near Santa Catalina Island, off the California coast. She wasn't alone. Her husband, actor Robert Wagner, was there, along with Christopher Walken, her co-star from Brainstorm, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. But by the next morning, the unthinkable had happened. Natalie's lifeless body was found floating in the water, dressed in a nightgown, socks, and a jacket. No one knows for certain what led to her tragic end. Over the years, investigators, journalists, and conspiracy theorists have tried to piece together the truth, but the story remains tangled in conflicting accounts and unanswered questions. One detail that immediately raised eyebrows was Walken's presence on the yacht. He had been invited for the weekend, but his wife, Georgianne, was noticeably absent. No clear explanation was ever given, and it only fueled speculation. According to Wagner, he went to bed that night unaware that anything was wrong. He later claimed he assumed Natalie had taken the small inflatable dinghy out on her own, something he said she had done before. His spokesman even suggested it wasn't unusual behavior for her. But the next morning shattered any sense of normalcy. Her body was discovered about a mile from the yacht, and the dinghy she supposedly used was found beached on shore. Then came an even more chilling revelation: the autopsy report. Natalie's body had 39 fresh bruises scattered across her arms and legs, and a distinctive mark on her left cheek. These injuries raised troubling questions. Wagner's initial explanation, that she had left the yacht on her own, seemed plausible at first, but the bruises painted a different picture, hinting at something far more disturbing. Adding to the mystery were reports of an argument between Wagner and Natalie earlier that night. Witnesses claimed they had heard raised voices, and some suspected tensions had boiled over. In his memoir, Pieces of My Heart, Wagner admitted they had fought, but insisted that after things calmed down, he had gone to bed, believing the matter was settled. He never wavered from his belief that Natalie had left the yacht on her own, just as she had done before. But the autopsy results made the story even murkier. Natalie's blood alcohol level was 0.14%, significantly high. On top of that, traces of 2 medications were found in her system, one for motion sickness and another painkiller. The combination of alcohol and these drugs could have made her disoriented and unsteady, raising serious concerns about how capable she would have been of handling the dinghy or protecting herself if she had fallen into the water. Then, there was the most unsettling clue of all. 2 witnesses on a nearby boat came forward, claiming they had heard a woman screaming for help during the night. According to them, the cries lasted for some time, but no one from the Splendor responded. Despite all these eerie details, the initial investigation didn't raise any red flags. Los Angeles County Coroner Thomas Noguchi ruled her death an accident, concluding that she had drowned with hypothermia likely playing a role. Hypothermia, which causes the body to lose heat faster than it can generate it, could have rendered her unconscious in the cold Pacific waters. And yet, doubts persisted. The argument, the bruises, the high alcohol level, the unanswered cries for help, the inconsistencies in the accounts given by those on the yacht. These details didn't fit together seamlessly, leaving many to wonder, was Natalie Wood's death truly an accident? Or was there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Let's explore further. Recent revelation. For years after Natalie Wood's mysterious death, the story of what happened on the yacht Splendor remained the same. According to her husband, Robert Wagner, their guest Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, Natalie had taken the small dinghy to go ashore on her own. It seemed like a tragic but simple case, an accident at sea. Although there were hushed whispers of something more sinister, Wagner's account was accepted without question, and the case was closed as an accidental drowning. But everything changed in November 2011. In a shocking revelation, Dennis Davern came forward with a confession that shattered the long-standing narrative. He admitted that he had lied during the original investigation. His new testimony reopened the case, breathing fresh life into a decades-old mystery. According to Davern, that night aboard the Splendor had been far more tense than anyone had previously admitted. He described a heated argument between Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner, triggered by her interactions with Christopher Walken, her co-star from Brainstorm. Davern claimed that Natalie had been playfully flirting with Walken, and Wagner, consumed with jealousy, became furious. The mood on the yacht quickly turned dark, with voices raised and emotions spiraling out of control. But what made Davern's confession even more disturbing was what he said happened after Natalie vanished. He alleged that Wagner actively prevented him from turning on the yacht's searchlights or calling for help. To Davern, Wagner's actions weren't just panicked or misguided. They felt intentional. He became convinced that Wagner had played a direct role in Natalie's death and had worked to cover it up. For decades, the world had believed that Natalie had drowned in a tragic accident. But Davern's revelations suggested that something far more sinister had taken place. The case, once dismissed without much scrutiny, was suddenly filled with doubt, and investigators began to reevaluate Wagner's actions that night, and his behavior came under intense examination. Meanwhile, Davern's own suspicions only grew stronger with time. He had kept his silence for years, but when he finally spoke up, he did not hold back. "I really do think RJ killed Natalie," he said, referring to Robert Wagner by his nickname. He recalled seeing Wagner standing at the back of the boat with the door open, moments before announcing that Natalie was missing. To Davern, it was obvious. Wagner had been the last person to see her alive, but the most chilling part came the next morning when Davern identified Natalie's body. She was covered in bruises, injuries that suggested she had been in a violent struggle before ending up in the water. To him, these marks were undeniable proof that her death was no accident. It wasn't a simple case of falling overboard, it was something far darker. Even Christopher Walken, who had been on the yacht that night, later acknowledged the tension. He described how the evening had been filled with arguments, yelling, and even objects being thrown. At one point, Wagner, who had been drinking heavily, smashed a wine bottle in anger. The argument, Walken revealed, wasn't just about jealousy. It was also about Natalie's career. She had been considering new projects, and Walken had encouraged her to keep acting. But Wagner, feeling insecure and threatened by her success, lashed out. Alcohol, resentment, and long-standing frustrations had turned the Splendor into a pressure cooker, and Natalie was caught right in the middle of it. Then, in 2012, the case took yet another turn. Los Angeles County Chief Coroner Lakshmanan Satyavagiswaran ordered a review of the evidence. Originally, Natalie's death had been classified as an accidental drowning, but after re-examining the case, the coroner made a crucial change. He amended the cause of death to drowning and other undetermined factors. This wasn't just a technicality, it was an official acknowledgement that something about Natalie's death didn't add up. As the investigation continued, the once accepted story of a tragic accident seemed less and less believable. The details of that night, jealousy, rage, and a shocking lack of urgency in the search for Natalie painted a picture of a mystery far more complex than anyone had imagined. Decades later, the truth about what really happened aboard the Splendor remains one of Hollywood's most haunting unsolved cases. Could they be evidence that something happened before she went overboard? Let's find out. Natalie Wood's unresolved case. On January 14, 2013, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office released a new 10-page report that added more details to Natalie Wood's original autopsy. This updated document revealed something unsettling. Some of the bruises on her body might have appeared before she entered the water. This raised even more troubling questions. Then, on February 1, 2018, the investigation took a dramatic turn. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officially named Robert Wagner, Natalie's husband, as a person of interest in her mysterious death. This was a major shift in the case, as it suggested that authorities were now looking at Wagner in a different light. For years, suspicions had surrounded him, but now the investigation seemed to be zeroing in on him more directly. Throughout it all, Wagner has always insisted he had nothing to do with Natalie's death. He has repeatedly stated that it was nothing more than a terrible accident. Even after being named a person of interest, there wasn't enough concrete evidence to bring charges, leaving many questions still unanswered. Despite the new developments, the case remains surrounded by mystery, with the truth still seemingly just out of reach. By May 27, 2022, Lieutenant Hugo Rea, one of the key officials handling the case, had to deliver a difficult and disheartening update. After years of relentless investigation, every possible lead had been explored, yet no new discoveries had emerged. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the mystery remained just as unsolved as it had been decades earlier. Rea's statement made it clear. The case was still technically open, but without fresh evidence, there was nowhere left to turn. Authorities were stuck at a dead end. They couldn't definitively rule out foul play, nor could they hold anyone responsible. For many, this felt like a frustrating and unsatisfying conclusion. The circumstances surrounding Natalie's death had captivated the public for decades, not just because of her Hollywood stardom, but because the case was riddled with contradictions. There were too many unanswered questions. The unexplained bruises on her body, the tangled web of emotions among those on the yacht, and the conflicting testimonies that never quite added up. When investigators labeled Wagner a person of interest, it was a strong indication that they suspected something more sinister than a tragic accident. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. Without undeniable proof, they couldn't close the case with certainty, leaving the mystery of Natalie Wood's death to remain one of Hollywood's most haunting unsolved tragedies. What truly happened that fateful night? What role, if any, did Robert Wagner play? And most hauntingly, how did Natalie Wood end up in the water? Let's dive deeper and uncover the shocking truth. Robert Wagner's shocking revelation. After years of mostly staying quiet, Robert R.J. Wagner has finally spoken out, though not directly. Through a spokesperson, he addressed the long-standing accusations that he was somehow involved in the tragic death of his wife, actress Natalie Wood. These claims have resurfaced repeatedly over the years, especially whenever new witnesses have come forward with what some see as troubling statements. Many consider Wood's case a cold case that refuses to fade from public memory. Wagner's spokesperson didn't mince words when responding to the allegations. In a fiery interview with Fox News, he made it clear that Wagner was not only frustrated, but deeply angered by the accusations. He even went so far as to call those making the claims despicable human beings, accusing them of exploiting a heartbreaking tragedy for their own benefit. According to Wagner's team, these allegations are not just false, they are cruel, immoral, and deeply unfair. For Wagner, the pain of losing Natalie Wood has never faded, and the constant scrutiny only makes it worse. Ever since her mysterious death in 1981, he has been at the center of suspicion. with many pointing fingers at him despite the case remaining officially unsolved. In 2018, when police named him a person of interest, the media frenzy reignited, keeping his name tied to the tragedy. Now, years later, Wagner has chosen to push back, unwilling to let these accusations go unchallenged any longer. His stance remains firm. He insists he had no involvement in Wood's death, which he continues to describe as a heartbreaking accident. For him and his family, the accusations have been more than just damaging to his reputation. They've been a heavy emotional burden. The spokesperson emphasized that Wagner is not just defending himself, but also standing up for his loved ones, who have endured decades of painful speculation. Lana Wood's sexual assault claims. In 2021, a shocking revelation came to light when Lana Wood, the younger sister of Hollywood star Natalie Wood, made a disturbing accusation in her memoir, Little Sister. Lana claimed that the legendary actor Kirk Douglas had sexually assaulted Natalie when she was just 16 years old. This revelation not only reopened painful wounds for the Wood family, but also cast a spotlight on the dark and often hidden side of Hollywood's past. According to Lana, the alleged assault happened in the summer of 1955, while Natalie was working on The Searchers, a classic Western that would later cement her place in Hollywood. At the time, Natalie was still a teenager, navigating the complex and often predatory nature of the entertainment industry. The incident reportedly took place at the famous Chateau Marmont Hotel in Los Angeles, a well-known hotspot for celebrities and Hollywood history. Lana wrote that their mother, Maria Zakharenko, had arranged a meeting between Natalie and Kirk Douglas, hoping that his influence could help further Natalie's career. Douglas, then in his 30s, was already a massive star, known for blockbuster films like Spartacus, The Bad and the Beautiful, and Gunfight at the OK Corral. Having him as a mentor seemed like a golden opportunity for the young actress. But instead of a career boost, the night ended in horror. Lana vividly described the moment Natalie returned to the car that night. She was visibly shaken, her face pale, her body tense. The atmosphere was heavy with something unspoken. She slammed the car door shut, her distress unmistakable. Their mother immediately leaned in, whispering urgently to Natalie, their hushed voices filled with concern. As a child at the time, Lana didn't understand what had happened, but she knew it was serious. She later recalled thinking, whatever it was, I was too young to be told. It wasn't until years later that Natalie finally confided in her sister. In a rare moment of vulnerability, she simply said, "He hurt me, Lana." Those words carried a weight that Lana would never forget. It was a moment that changed everything for her, shifting her understanding of her sister's struggles and revealing the hidden pain Natalie had carried for so long. For Lana, this revelation became a driving force. She felt a deep responsibility to tell the truth, not just for Natalie, but for the countless other women in Hollywood who had endured similar experiences in silence. Through her advocacy, she has become a powerful voice for survivors, determined to shed light on the industry's long history of protecting powerful figures while silencing those who have been harmed. When Kirk Douglas passed away in February 2020, at the age of 103, his legacy was widely celebrated. He was remembered as one of Hollywood's greatest actors, a man who had left an undeniable mark on cinema. But after his death, the allegations against him resurfaced, sparking intense discussions on social media. On Twitter, both his name and Natalie's began trending together, reigniting conversations about abuse, power, and the dark truths buried beneath Hollywood's glamorous facade. Lana Wood's decision to speak out was more than just an attempt to find closure. It was a call for justice, a demand for accountability, and a reminder that the voices of survivors should never be ignored. Natalie Wood's struggles in Hollywood. Natalie Wood was more than just a Hollywood star. She was a captivating actress whose beauty and talent left a lasting impression on audiences. But behind the dazzling lights of fame, her life was far from easy. Growing up in the film industry meant dealing with constant pressure, both in her career and personal life.
From a young age, she was drawn into relationships with much older men, a common but often troubling experience for young women in Hollywood. One of these relationships was with director Nicholas Ray, a man significantly older than her. While outsiders may have seen it as glamorous, the reality was far more complicated. The large age gap created an imbalance, leaving Natalie in a vulnerable position in an industry that often exploited young actresses.
Rumors about Natalie's personal life only added to the weight she carried. One particularly controversial story linked her to Frank Sinatra while she was still underage. Whether true or not, such speculation could be damaging, especially for someone constantly under the public eye. Navigating these complex relationships at such a young age shaped her early career and personal life in ways that were not always healthy. They exposed her to the darker side of fame, making her realize that Hollywood wasn't just about talent and success. It was also about power, control, and sometimes manipulation. Adding to these struggles was the immense pressure from the Hollywood studio system, which viewed actors as investments rather than people. Studios demanded perfection, forcing actors to maintain a carefully crafted image that would appeal to audiences. For Natalie, this meant being pushed into roles that didn't always align with her artistic ambitions. The pressure to appear flawless in both her personal and professional life was overwhelming, creating a deep sense of insecurity. Like many actors, she was expected to prioritize the success of her films over her own well-being. Hollywood's golden age was not as glamorous as it seemed. Studios controlled nearly every aspect of an actor's life, from the films they starred in to how they conducted themselves in public. Female actors, in particular, had little say over their careers and were often cast in roles that emphasized their looks rather than their talent. But as Natalie grew older, she became increasingly aware of this control and wanted to break free. She longed for more creative freedom and the ability to choose roles that truly resonated with her. Her refusal to accept certain roles led to direct conflict with Warner Brothers. When she turned down a part the studio insisted she take, they retaliated by suspending her. This move was a stark reminder of how much power the studios had over their stars. Contracts were binding, and actors who resisted were often punished. But for Natalie, the suspension became a turning point. Rather than backing down, she became even more determined to take control of her career. She didn't want to be just another beautiful face on the screen. She wanted to be a respected actress, someone whose work reflected her own artistic vision rather than the demands of studio executives. Natalie was part of a growing movement of actresses who were beginning to push back against Hollywood's rigid system. Women in the industry were expected to fit into narrow roles, both on and off screen. They were often cast as love interests or damsels in distress, rarely given the opportunity to portray complex, multidimensional characters. Natalie's refusal to conform made her a trailblazer. She understood that standing up to the system came with risks. Actors who challenged studio power could see their careers suffer, but she was willing to take that chance. Despite the many obstacles she faced, Natalie's talent continued to shine. Her unforgettable performances in films like West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause proved that she was more than just a Hollywood beauty. She was an actress capable of bringing real depth and emotion to her roles. However, the struggles behind the scenes often overshadowed her achievements. Her career was filled with highs and lows, but through it all, she fought for the right to define her own path. Natalie Wood's story is one that echoes the experiences of many women in Hollywood, both past and present. The industry has long placed young actresses in vulnerable position, prioritizing profit over their well-being. But perhaps the most haunting part of Natalie's story is how it ended. At the height of her career, her life was cut tragically short. What are your thoughts on the shocking revelation by Robert Wagner on Natalie Wood's death? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.